Hello, everybody. We are live from DAX, Kansas City, and this is the Takeup, live every Friday with me, Eric Campbell. And today we are dealing with some technical difficulties and some problems with streaming. So I know that some of you are definitely not going to catch this live, but I wanted to make sure I could come to you and take a little time to talk about what's going on here at DAX, Kansas City. So this is DAX, the Decorated Apparel Expo that is in Kansas City. We are at the KCI Expo Center, and right now I'm coming to you, as you can kind of see, sponsored by the two regular guys. As we often do, we have a booth out here for the decorators community, for two regular guys, and today for the Take Up. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on at DAX Kansas City, and I'll talk a little bit about what I've been doing, teaching, and training today as I'm live in the booth. Well, I would have had some walk-on guests, but it looks like some of them will not be here. If we end up with any walk-on guests, I will go ahead and let you guys know. But if not, we're just going to talk a little bit about what I talked about in my classes today. We can do some of that training, some questions people asked me, and some tips that are going to come from the things I taught, the things I saw. So for the moment, let's go ahead and start the take up there, and we'll have a little bit of a short show, and I'll probably post some other live content or material tomorrow from DAX. And as I'm going straight from here to Scottsdale to ThreadX, we might see a little bit of that ThreadX content as well. So if you're still live here, love to hear from you. Jump in on the comments, Facebook, YouTube, anybody. Jump in, ask questions, talk, and we'll go ahead and chat for this short live show from DAX. So thank you very much for coming on and watching. So let's go ahead and get into some of the things I was teaching myself. So the first class I did Thursday morning, we did a wonderful, it was really 3.5 hours. Now, listening to me talk for 3.5 hours, I think that's a slight punishment. So there were breaks involved. But I did kind of a 3-part class where we were talking about debating digitizing, right? So debating digitizing was really all about making the choice whether or not you wanted to bring in-house embroidery digitizing into your company. And what does it mean? What do we expect from digitizing? What do we expect when we learn digitizing? And what can we do to increase value from digitizing in-house? So by the way, I see you, Wade. Thank you for tuning in, Wade. Thank you for watching the show. And during this course, Debating Digitizing, we went through not only that, but we talked about impressions, the way that you have to interpret art into stitches. We talked about some guidelines for that to help people figure this out. I find that new digitizers really have a hard time breaking up an image and dealing with the fact that they're going to have to convert it to stitches, and choosing which stitches go where. That's something that really does tend to challenge them as well. So we talked about that all in the second section. Third section really got into proper digitizing workflow, how to get digitizing due correctly. And then the last one, oh yeah, protecting eyes. Here, Sherry Crystal. Sherry, thank you for being here. Protecting eyes. Yeah, there is something there. At the last section of it, we talked about protecting your eyes and protecting yourself because you end up having eye strain, repetitive strain disorders, things like that. That was the third section as well. So yeah, Mike, hey, it's an hour early. Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't check for time zones when they did the scheduling, and there was the only way I could handle this and get it in between all the other stuff I'm doing. I'm supposed to be at a panel with the two regular guys here very shortly, and I'm letting them go ahead of me, and I'll show up at the panel in the middle. So rather than not give you guys the content, I decided to come early. But Sherry asked me about protecting eyes. The third part of that class was really about ergonomics. It was about what you can do to have a longer career doing what we do, doing digitizing. And so a lot of that was about taking breaks, dealing with issues with eye strain, dealing with issues with repetitive stress disorders. And that really has to do with the way you set yourself up, not just constantly using a mouse, using ergonomic tools when you can. And I actually talked about, the pen versus mouse debate. Now, I am definitely a mouse digitizer, have been for many years, but the pen tablets are also awesome and can help you to have a different way to handle or to access digitizing that lets you use a different muscle group. So we really talked about that. But here's the things that really kind of got on with people for debating digitizing. We really got into several things. And now here, I'm going to have to move my camera, guys. So go ahead and come with me for the trip. We're good. But yeah, here we are, guys. Running live, guys, running hot. So as everybody kind of jumped in on this, in the debating digitizing class, the thing that really kind of people attached to, I would say, wasn't just, yeah, the ergonomic stuff is cool, but what people really attached to is how to do impressions, how to do interpreting art. Aaron Montgomery, everybody, who just got done teaching his awesome class on marketing. But I think what really resonated with people had to have been the fact that digitizing in and of itself can be done for different reasons and different ways, and that there is no right way to source your files or to the right level of in-house digitizing you want to do. If you want to do some in-house digitizing because you want to have control, then that's really awesome, right? If you can do in-house digitizing for yourself, there are reasons to do it. But the one reason, and this is the thing I really want to get through to you that I think was a stinger for that class, is that not paying someone for the file is not enough reason for you to take on the process of in-house digitizing. So if I could boil it down to one item, not paying for the file is not enough motivation for you to learn to interpret art into stitches, to work with the technicalities of embroidery. However, the things that are worthwhile are responsiveness, being able to answer quickly and iterate quickly on a design when you need to. I know I worked for movies and TV, and that's something that was really important to us because I could handle all of these logos done really quickly and handled that way. So it had to be turned around 24 hours and all the way to the embroidery process. What's also good is production control. If you want to be able to control how many, color changes you have and be able to control the way you produce for different equipment that you have in your shop, then that's important. And also, I would say that creativity is important. Being able to handle different kinds of things to make embroidery more dimensional. And if we want to really sell embroidery the best, this is the other stinger for this class. We have to quit apologizing for what embroidery is and what it can't do and start selling it on its strengths. And it is a dimensional, luxurious, high quality item. It is a 3D thing we're creating instead of a 2D representation. It is an interpretation of the art into the medium. So start selling your embroidery on something better than that. Seriously. Okay, Mike, totally good thing. One of the things that I talked about was what phase of digitizing do you want to be in? And one of the phases is to outsource almost everything, do simple things in-house. So Mike's got it. Single color satins and text, got it. Anything else you farm out, better and faster, totally fine by you. Totally fine to do. I mean, honestly, there's nothing wrong with outsourcing. And honestly, even let's say you were somebody like me. I was an in-house digitizer with a lot of experience and I did a lot of very detailed work. There was a point at which we had overflow work, more work than we could do, and I might actually farm out the simpler pieces because I was going to do the artistic pieces myself. So there's no one right way to handle it, but here's the kicker. Whatever it is that gives you more value you can give your client, what opens you up to more opportunity is valid. Whichever way you want to handle your digitizing is valid as long as it does that. If it opens you up to more opportunity, if it gives more value to your client, that's valid. So while we're here, I'm going to say hi to some folks who have just jumped in. Rob Birch, no, you're always digitizing. Good to see you here. Cindy, thank you for checking in. Heather Davidson, hi Heather, happy to see you here. And Tom Farr, hey, Tom Farr knows embroidery and digitizing very well. If he says I have a good point, you might want to listen to that point more than the ones I usually make. Thank you, Tom. So yeah, also and Justin Armenta, hello, Justin. Thank you for joining me on the Takeup. So that's really the big deal. What is going to open you to more opportunity? As much as I love digitizing, and I'll be honest, I would keep doing it as a hobby and do digitize even when I don't need to, because I love doing it. I love the medium. I love the art form. But when we're talking business, we're talking profit. We're talking making money. We're talking opportunity costs. We're talking keeping things moving in your shop. And when you're keeping things moving in your shop, sometimes you just have to do outsourcing, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with outsourcing done correctly, especially if you establish good relationships that make it more than just grabbing the lowest common denominator. And that may be the other thing, truthfully, to watch out for. If you're always bargain shopping, the chances are you're going to have really just inconsistency in your product, and that's something you don't want. Being consistent makes you a hero. Being consistent makes you someone that everybody can trust. We got Heather Davidson in once again. Farm out complicated stuff, well worth the price. Simple stuff I do, totally fine way to go about it. Also, if you want to learn to digitize, you should probably still keep outsourcing while you do so that you can keep money moving through the door and you can study the outsourced designs as a way to teach yourself the process. So totally worthwhile to keep doing that. Nothing wrong with it. And we're just going to go ahead and call that the main tips for our debating digitizing. So that class goes on for 3 hours. There's a lot more to it. And I know somebody else asked about the ergonomics. One of the things I'm going to recommend right off the bat, and I don't have something to bring up for a banner or a link, is there's a piece of software called ILEO. It's absolutely free software, and all it really does is remind you to take breaks. And if you're somebody like me who stares dead-eyed like a zombie at their work and really does not blink while they're digitizing, and I don't, you may develop dry eye syndrome or problems with it. And I honestly, I have eye problems now that are really related to the way that I stare when I work. Really good idea to take breaks. And for your hands, your wrists, your arms, you need to return to a neutral position and get them off of that keyboard and mouse or off of that graphics tablet. So taking those breaks while you're using ILEO or any of these reminders to relax, to look out of a window at infinity, or to close your eyes, it's always useful to do. So take care of yourselves. If you digitize in work, absolutely make sure that you're not destroying your body as you're doing this work. So if you want to digitize, do that. We have a comment from Cindy I'm going to bring in real quick. Most of our logos we outsource. I am learning for the easier things, but you can't beat overnight turnaround for not much money, and it's ready to go, not a lot of trial and error. Yeah, valid. Like I said, for me, I had a lot of clients who wanted not only very quick turnaround, they wanted consultation with a digitizer to help them figure out what they needed. So they wanted someone to help them get their best embroidered result. For me, that consultation made more value for the company, and it meant that I was part of that process. So your mileage may vary. I would say for us, once we had mature digitizing in-house, we were selling on that fact. We were making quite a lot of money doing it. So that's one way to go. Hey, Sherry Crystal, thank you for being a hero on this one. ileo.com from Sherry. Yeah, it's funny. It's got a cartoon character, but if you're like me and you won't remember to quit staring at the monitor, ILEO will help you remember. So good things to do from the debating digitizing piece. And honestly, like I said, I love to do everything in house. And what I really learned, I mean, where it turned for me, where I started to figure it out, when I was like, okay, I have other things I can do that make more profit. And sometimes being involved in every little thing, especially if you're solo entrepreneurs, should you be digitizing right now or selling right now? Should you be building your business or should you be working production? You really have to think about that. And you have to think about how many hours you're spending on whatever goes biz dev, on developing your business, on working on your business instead of in your business. You have to think about that. And for me, it was also, hey, you know what? Even though I like to do everything in house, sometimes you get a better result. Say you send out caps and you have them done as a panel program overseas and then constructed and brought in. Sometimes you can do things there you can't do here. Now, admittedly, I still did a lot of that digitizing and sent it off to them because I'm picky and because we had customers who would only use things that I did the way that they liked. So there are reasons why that works. And if the customers are willing to pay enough, hey, man, go with it. That's worthwhile. Well, let's go ahead and move on to kind of the next topic. And that's the thing I taught today. This is my second class, was specialty thread and digitizing. And so in the specialty thread and digitizing class, I really went over what do I consider what specialty threads are first, which is just any thread that has a differentiation point between it and, say, 40 weight polyester rayon. So anything thick, differently colored, special effects, has different fibers that is not normal to what we usually use. Anything like that, I'm considering a specialty thread, or it has an effect like glow. Any of those I'm going to call those specialty threads. And that's something that really can be, I think, valuable to your bottom line, as well as just interesting and creative to use. I mean, hey, when we're talking about this as a hobby or as a craft or as an art, then specialty threads are just another thing you can put in your palette to make really cool embroidery. But when we're talking about this in business terms, then you have to go somewhere else with that. So what I ended up talking about in this class was first kind of defining the terms of thread weight, talking about the thickness of needles, because that changes the shortest stitch that you can make. And honestly, I moved in from that to some specialty techniques that are specific to threads, both normal fiber threads that are thick and thin, and specialty fiber threads like fuzzy threads that are cotton or wool blends. And so we went from that out to, what does this do for business, right? What's the actual bottom line effect of using specialty threads? And honestly, that's where I think the real money is. I feel like with these classes, it's great for me to teach you how to make a fuzzy animal and do brushed thread, and you can do that. And I can even tell you where you might sell it. But in the end, talking about perceived and real value or actual measurable value versus perceived value and how you can use value to make more money is probably something that I hope everybody listened to maybe the most. Now, I know that a lot of you guys are like me. You love the creative part of this thing. And you're probably looking at it going, I want to know more about that creative stuff. I want to know how to make a design that I have in my mind. Those are good things to learn. And that's why I did teach a lot of that technique. But I always want to sneak in something where I talk about value or sales or ways to keep your business alive longer. So in that class, I think if I wanted to give you the kicker points, right, the points that really get people, that tie it all together, first thing is that once you understand that density is spacing between courses of thread, that the thickness of the thread is related intimately to the density, and that the size of the needle has to do with how short a stitch you can make and have it form correctly and have it not break, that you can take any design, any technique, and apply it to any thread, especially because you have now the thickness. If you have the thickness of the thread, you understand what densities are, you understand short stitches, you understand how to process that, you will be able to apply any of your technique as a digitizer to any thread. And especially if you know the qualities of the thread themselves, because certainly density changes with the texture of the thread. If you have a smooth, thick thread, yes, you can lower density, but you can lower it even more with a fuzzy thread, because the fuzzy thread, despite being around the same thickness as, say, the smoother thick thread, the fuzz covers more. You end up with more coverage with that fuzz, and so then you end up with a lot more going on with it, right? You can actually cover the ground quite a bit better. So, like I said, knowing what the thread is like, knowing the thickness of the thread, understanding how that works with density, understanding your minimum stitch lengths will allow you to do a lot with designs. And in fact, probably the most interesting thing with that is I showed people a design that I had digitized for 40 weight thread. So 40 weight thread, standard, we understand it has a density, target density of about 0.4 millimeters or 4 embroidery points. And I rendered it in 75 weight thread at half the size, and all I did was rescale it without processing. So take this in for a minute. Super detailed design that I rendered in at half the size. All I did was shrink it down to the target density for 75 weight thread, which is about twice the density you would want for 40 weight thread. Because why? It's half as thick. Now, the whole class gives you a lot more than that. And if you want to see the class, I would love to see you guys out at DAX, Minnesota, or DAX in Tinley Park, Chicagoland, which are all coming up this year, and we're going to do the full class. But that was the technical interesting thing that went around it, right? That's the thing that got people on the technical side. But the thing that probably got people on the business side was this concept. Well, hopefully they took it all home. Number one, that we have to quit pinning our value to increased labor or increased material costs alone. Now, certainly, specialty thread may have increased material costs, but the value we offer our client could be higher than just the cost of the material. It's not just adding more thousands of stitches so that we can justify somehow what we need to charge, right? That's what we're going to get into. Now, certainly you come to the classes later, you'll find out more about it, but that's something that I want you to think about, is that your value that you offer to the customer doesn't know how many thousand stitches really translate unless they know a whole lot about embroidery. So if you save 1,000 stitches because of something you've done in your techniques, or if you save 30% density because of something you do with thick thread, why do we need to necessarily change that to the customer? You're providing them a garment that has value in and of itself. By the way, thank you, Heidi. Can't wait for the class in Chicago. Can't wait to have you out there in Chicago. And I'll try not to give too much away so people who are paying for the class get more, but you also get a chance to pick my brain afterward. And I think that's probably worth more. Asking questions about your direct question and getting your answers directly are probably worth more than anything I can tell you from that podium to some degree. And actually, I'm going to bring in another comment from Heidi while we're stopped for just a second. Heidi says, I do everything in-house. I took the time to learn how to do it the right way. Now I can do it while other orders are stitching out. It takes time, but to me it was worth it. I have very high standards. Totally fine. Yeah, absolutely. I have incredibly high standards when it comes to digitizing. And in fact, that's one of those few things. Everybody asks me, oh, why don't I wear a lot of embroidery? It's because I can barely wear embroidery unless it is perfect. And I will look at embroidery. I turn everything inside out. I see what kind of stabilizer is being used, and I generally don't approve of a lot of commercial embroidery and a lot of retail embroidery. So I don't usually wear a whole lot of it unless I make something myself or one of the people who I really trust makes the embroidery, and then that's something I will wear happily. But sometimes I'll wear some stuff, but pretty frequently, yeah, a lot of commercial embroidery is I find hard to wear because I think the quality doesn't look like what I want it to, and it drives me nuts. And if people ask me if I made it, I feel the need to defend myself. So that's terrible to say, but a lot of retail work is actually pretty low. What that also tells you, though, is if you get an excellent bead on what you're doing with digitizing, your work's probably going to look better than mass-produced retail work. And if you go look at what's selling on the rack, the chances are it's really not all that amazing compared to what you can do in your own software if you learn and if you dedicate yourself to the study. So probably the last thing I'll say about this class, especially thread digitizing class, is this. I'm going to give you one of these kicker moments that I think actually brings something home. It's not having the specialty thread that's going to necessarily change your business overnight. It's not learning or having a rack of this stuff that makes it change, but showing that you are creative and willing to create solutions based on materials that people don't use, that you're doing something different from what everybody else is doing, is where you win. If you're willing to do something that your competition will not do or cannot do, that adds value for your customer, the chances are you're going to win. And frankly, sometimes at a much higher cost to the customer. Now, it's not all the time. It's not for every customer either. If you've got bargain shoppers will always look for that nickel off, but they're also fickle and they're not the best customers you to chase. Those great customers are going to look to you as a consultant who delivers a creative solution. That's where we want to be. We want to be consultants. We don't want to be boxes that money comes in and shirt comes out. It's not the best thing to be because a commodity is replaceable. Someone who is your friend in the business, who helps you to market yourself, who understands your position, and who gives you creative solutions, not so much. Your friend in the business who knows what to do, who advises you, who is your counsel for the promotional product of embroidery is valuable. And that's what I want you guys to be to your customers. I don't want you to be some throwaway commodity. Like I said, the t-shirt box that money comes in and shirts come out. I want you to be consultants. Their advisor in the world of decorated apparel should be you. And if they didn't need you, they wouldn't come to you in the first place. You have the skill set, you have the knowledge, and you can consult them to get their best embroidered result. It's not about changing their design because they have to. It's about suggesting to them the best way that they can get the most promotional value and the most attention out of their art for the best embroidered result. So think about it that way. That's really where we went with specialty thread digitizing. Now, admittedly, also, what else do we talk about? Emulating knit panels, making animals with brushed fur that look fuzzy and awesome, how to replicate some of the designs that I've shown before that have metallic threads in them, how to handle metallics in a way that works best, and the fact that some of the new metallics on the market are a little less shiny but run a lot more like normal thread. We talked all about the technical parts of this, but I'd like people to take home and get excited about the idea that you can create more perceived and actual value for your customers and also make more money, more profit in the process. So I'll do one more little piece that I think you can take home, but still, if you're coming out to the classes, you're going to get it reinforced times 10. It takes like 7 to 10 times for most people to let something sink in, myself included. If you really need to do that in marketing, they say 7 to 10 touches before somebody takes an action. You'll hear this more and more, and I would still love to have you come to the class and get more detail. But let's talk about two things really quickly. Value. And when we talk about value to a customer, there's measurable value and perceived value. And when we're talking about specialty thread, measurable value is thread that is a specialty because it adds a functionality to a garment. Fire-resistant thread, reflective thread, something that actually adds safety, it adds a function, and there are threads that do that. Like I said, fire-resistant is one of my top ones for people who are working on electrical lines or people who are working in fire safety or in the fire departments. Fire safety thread, that is something that actually works. The other thing that you have is perceived value. That's where somebody looks at your piece and says, this looks different. This looks interesting. It is novel. It is something that I haven't seen before. I don't think the competition does this. Where did you learn this? Oh, this looks like retail. This looks like something you would see in a department store. Or it looks like a fashion piece. And the thing is, everybody says to me, okay, then Erich, yeah, how many of these pieces are you doing? How many of these detailed pieces are you doing? And I'd say that's not the point. Being the person who can do these things increases their trust in you. And you do one of these quick turnarounds, you do something exciting, you do something that looks cool, you have this sample so you can show it, and fairly frequently they will come to you and go, wow, oh, that retro styled piece with the fuzzy thread that's matte finish, oh, that looks cool. It looks like some sort of, oh, that's like some 50s varsity stuff. That's cool. Hey, yeah, I need a polo shirt that has a left chest logo, and you seem like you know how to do this stuff. You end up taking home the other work that is standard, that is the money stuff that makes the machines go up and down, right? That makes the needles run. Pretty frequently, I would provide a solution to someone that they really loved, and that love for that piece, that small solution, that crazy offbeat thing would drive them to bring me the rest. It's like the movie stuff that I've worked on. You would do a fast turnaround piece for a actual prop, and doing the prop, doing that patch would mean later on I'm going to be getting the wrap gifts and the uniforms and the stuff for everybody in the crew. And when you have that, you have all of that volume that we'd rather have than having just small orders for most of us, unless we're doing really boutique work. But by the way, not like we didn't make money on the other stuff. We made tremendous amounts of money, because when you do something quickly, when you do something well, when you do something that is not the same as what everybody else can do or will do, you can command a higher price because there is a higher value on it. It's supply and demand. If no one else will handle someone's single like turnaround patch in 8 hours, you can charge $300 for that patch or $600 for that patch if someone needs it badly enough. I'm not trying to say you gouge those movie studios, but I am trying to say they valued it very highly, and they paid highly for getting what they want when they need it from a trustworthy person who'd help them. And the other thing about this is, I talked about consultation earlier. Let me drop this banner out because we're not really talking about specialty thread here. But talking about consultation earlier, here's what I'll do. DAX Kansas City. I became a consultant who could be given a piece of art that they knew was not suited to embroidery, and I would turn it back to them with everything ready for embroidery for them to approve. And that's something that if you become skilled enough with embroidery and skilled enough in art, you can do pretty readily. So that's part of the consultation thing I talked about. They knew that I was an expert in my field. I had proven myself to them. And eventually, though it would be lovely if we always got embroidery ready art, what I ended up getting instead was art that was ready to be converted for embroidery. And they knew that I had the skill to be able to convert it and give them back a good suggestion for what it should be. Once you develop that kind of trust, number one, you become super easy to work with. They don't have to keep modifying something while someone on the other end keeps going, that won't work for embroidery. That won't work for embroidery. The text is too small. The detail is too small. Yeah, well, I just gave them what they needed to know, and I made it quick and I made it easy. So convenient, skilled, fast, however, expensive. So it's not for everybody. Contract embroidery is not that way. Trying to do mass volumes that aren't that way, that was a boutique thing, that was a specialty thing. But it does give you a concept, which goes back to the digitizing class, that there's really no one right way to do this. It's whatever's right to make profit for you. It's whatever's right for the customers, either that you have or that you're trying to chase. That's what's right. What's right isn't what's right for everybody. What's right is what's right for your customer, what's right for your market, what's right for your tribe. That's what you're trying to look for, and that's what you should do. Now, honestly, guys, I would love to stay on longer, but I'm going to try and keep this right now about 30 minutes. We're going to go ahead and cut out. There's going to be more live content from DAX. You got to love DAX Kansas City here. And also, what I'm going to show you guys is a DAX show. If you look up the hashtag DAX show, I've been sharing everything there. So search for the hashtag DAX show, and you'll see everything live from DAX Kansas City that I'm sharing and for other people are sharing. So you'll be able to see all the cool things that people are putting up. There are, of course, all the usual booths with the equipment and supplies. And honestly, there's a lot of decorators around here. There's a lot of energy. I've had tons of people showing up to the classes. And as I always say, a good amount of what you pay for is to network with the other peers you have in your area so that you can find out more about what they're doing. And they have real on-the-ground information, and they have the same kind of questions you do. So with that, guys, I am going to go ahead and head out. I know this is a short take-up, but there will be more take-up adjacent content coming soon. And I can't thank you enough for showing up. So everybody, keep on showing up. Hey, well, by the way, Cindy, I'll jump in with more comment like I always do. I want to see the fuzzy animals. Yeah, we'll talk about that. I actually used a sample that the good people at ZSK are doing and showed that piece because it's something that they've been running. So if you go to see ZSK at any of these shows, see their booth, they actually have some stuff running with that 12 weight wool blend thread. But yeah, fuzzy animals are just the tip of the iceberg. And honestly, anything you can do to provide novelty, to provide value, is going to help you sell better. All right, guys. So that's it for the take up. And I can't wait to see you guys again soon.